Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Great American Story. Today, we're really excited, John. We have Bret Baier joining us. Bret loves history every bit as much as you. Mac, we should probably have him become a regular guest here on The Great American Story.
No
You know
doubt.
what I'm saying about that?
Yeah, Fox
right?
News Channel's chief political anchor.
Yes.
And acclaimed artist author is joining us.
Also, appointment television. I just have to put in that. I mean, I go home every day and watch Special Report for an hour and get all the news I need. Anyway, Bret, thank you so much for joining us. When did the light bulb go off for you and say, in putting this book together to rescue the American spirit, there's so much more of the Teddy Roosevelt story to share with people?
Yeah, Ron, John, it's great to be with you. He jumps off the page. You know, Teddy Roosevelt is kind of like a character so full of anecdotes that just are really interesting to read about and write about. What my focus is, and I've been with you a lot when these books have come out. This is now my 6th presidential biography. I started with Eisenhower and then Reagan. I did FDR, Grant, Washington, and now Teddy Roosevelt. And each one of these, I kind of try to look at a soda straw moment that's maybe history overlooks. And for TR, it's that he really wanted his legacy to be forward-leaning for America, a global leader in the world. And it's the turn of the century. And he does that by getting involved in a territorial dispute that's happening between Russia and Japan, and they are devolving into war quickly. And he reaches out to both leaders and says, come to America. They come to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. He sets the whole thing up logistically and essentially shuttles back and forth and gets a peace treaty between these two countries. That effort gets him the Nobel Peace Prize, and it also gets America on the world stage saying, this country made a difference in the world.
What would you say, Bret, as you have kind of looked over his life? I always like to kind of go chronologically. He grew up as kind of small and sickly, and yet he had the kind of personality that he was not going to let that deter him.
Right.
What did he do in those early years that then, would you say, kind of impacted the rest of his life?
Yeah, he had debilitating asthma. His mom actually didn't think he was going to survive. It was that bad. He spent his early years battling that and in a room behind a window. And they tried everything. Back in those days, they had all these weird efforts to try to get rid of asthma, including smoking a cigar and drinking strong coffee. Imagine a little kid, and they think that's a good idea. It didn't work.
Yeah.
And anyway, his dad eventually says, you need to buck up, and the way he feels good is to be outdoors. And so he spends a ton of time outdoors. He thinks he's going to be a scientist. He collects specimens. He's just an interesting kid, kind of weird in a way, but his family, all his brothers and sisters, look at him as a leader, and they see leadership early on. He goes on to Harvard and becomes kind of a real leader and a leader in school. And he runs for office because he decides he likes politics. And he runs for New York State Legislature, and he becomes the youngest. He is living life. You know, he's a troublemaker. He kind of stirring the pot. The party doesn't really love him because he's counter-establishment. He meets the love of his life, Alice Hathaway, who he calls Sunshine. They are about to have a child, and she dies after giving birth to their daughter. She dies on the same day as his mother, who dies on Valentine's Day, together in the same house. They both die. And he's crestfallen. He has despair, and he pulls himself out of New York and goes out west to the Badlands of North Dakota. And that starts a whole different adventure for 2 years for Teddy Roosevelt.
You know, I finally made it to the Teddy Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota just last year. And it is stark, and it is beautiful, and it is incredibly lonely. Why did he pick North Dakota, Bret, and how did that What did he do over those many months? How did that experience shape him?
Well, he went out there once, and he was convinced to buy a ranch, and it was his solitude. He found it bucked him up. He was a stranger in a strange land, but he met these characters out there that became his friends, ranchers and cowboys. He had experiences like almost getting in a gunfight, and he was a boxer. He got in some real brawls out there. He became a tough guy in the wake of the death of his wife and mother, and he finally finds himself there and says, I need to go back into the world, and he goes back and becomes New York City Police Commissioner. And which is another chapter in his life where he's going around trying to get the corrupt cops off the street. He goes at night dressed in a black jacket, and he brings a reporter with him to kind of show that all the stuff he's doing to make the police better. And it turns out that he was really successful. And from that, he goes to the Assistant Secretary of the Navy. He gets recruited by McKinley and his administration to go to Washington to become the Assistant Secretary of the Navy. He loved that job. But the Spanish-American War is starting, and he wants to be in it. In part because his dad paid not to be in the Civil War, and I think that stuck with him, and he wanted to get in the game. He wanted to be in the fight. So he resigns as Assistant Secretary of the Navy and creates this regiment, he's authorized to do it, of the guys that he met out in North Dakota, the cowboys and the ranchers, and guys that he went to Harvard with, like very upper class guys that wanted to be in the fight as well. And this Star Wars bar of a regiment is formed, and it eventually becomes the Rough Riders.
Sure.
And they go to Cuba, and they have amazing battles and heroic actions that make Teddy Roosevelt a hero.
Bret, as we jump forward toward to his presidency, I mean, he was, I know we didn't have polls back then, but you write that he was the people's champion. He was immensely popular, right? I mean, as far as popularity goes, I mean, he won, 336 electoral votes in 1904?
Yeah. Right. That's the time he runs. Obviously, he becomes president when McKinley dies, and he's vice president. Just to get there, he becomes New York governor after he comes back from the Spanish-American War. He comes back in May, the election's in November, he wins New York governor. And again, he's stirring the pot against the establishment to the point where the Republican Party says, this cannot continue, let's put him someplace that he can't do any harm. They make him vice president on the ticket with McKinley, and they say, this will be fine. He's just a ceremonial spot. 6 months later, McKinley's assassinated, and at 42, he becomes the youngest president ever in our history. So finishes out that term, and you're right, he wins hands down because he is so popular. He, is pro-capitalism, wants pro-business to work, but he wants capitalism for everybody. So he's fighting for the little guy. He is the first president to get involved in a labor dispute, coal mining strike. He files 40 antitrust lawsuits against big companies like J.P. Morgan. So he's a thorn in the side of some business, but at the same time, he creates the Panama Canal, the biggest business boon ever for the U.S. for trade. So he was an enigma in some ways, but the people loved him, and he was very populist.
And isn't there a story about just, suddenly the news travels as quickly as possible, but it's 100 years ago, McKinley's been assassinated. All of a sudden, where is TR? How did they get the news to him, and how did he eventually get sworn in? There's a whole story there.
Oh, big time. And that's how the book starts, actually. It's dramatic. He goes to Buffalo. He's out on vacation. He gets word in a telegram that McKinley's ill after being shot, and they think that he needs to be there. He goes there, and then the doctors say, well, McKinley is recovering. He should be fine, to the point where they say, go back to vacation. So he goes to the Adirondacks, and he is hiking up this mountain and Mount Mercy, and he is in the wilderness, way far away, and McKinley turns for the worst, and they actually send a prospector who knew the land to go find him, but they have to go through the fog and the mountain. They finally find him. He gets the telegram, and he travels down as fast as he can down the mountain, and then there's this harrowing ride in a horse and buggy to get to the train and get to Buffalo. He gets there, and McKinley's already dead, and he's sworn in. But to find Roosevelt in that situation was really tough. There was no GPS iPhone.
Yeah, so primitive. Although the Adirondacks are beautiful, but still, what a story. Yeah, and what a great way to start that story. Yeah, for sure. John.
Indeed. Yeah, I find it interesting. Brett, you talked about how he was such a sickly child. He really worked against that image, though, right? I mean, he was a Rough Rider, right? I mean, he later in life, I mean, he fought against that, right? I mean, it was yeah. And am I mistaken that he was blind in one eye? Is that true? I read that somewhere.
He was losing sight. And
from a boxing fight,
after.
Right?
Yeah, it was after a boxing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so that's how he actually got through and bulked up. His father told him he had to start getting tough, and he became a boxer. Speaking of his early days, there's amazing. I have an hour special on Fox Nation that tracks the book. It's under the same title, Birth to Rescue the American Spirit. And there's a picture from Lincoln's funeral going up Broadway, and it goes past the Roosevelt brownstone. And in the window are two boys, and one of them is Teddy Roosevelt looking at Lincoln's funeral going past.
Wow,
and it's an amazing image, because the next time they would meet would be on Mount Rushmore. So
isn't that something?
I think history is like amazing in that it's very cyclical, and he fights through that, becomes this tough guy in part because his tough start. Each one of the biographies is something about a president who goes through a tough time, a crucible, something they have to get through, and Teddy Roosevelt got through it.
All right, we are going to take a break. John puts together a question every show that we do, Brett. He's going to challenge you and me on our TR knowledge next. Ready?
Okay.
All right, everybody, welcome back to more of the Great American Story. And we're having a great time today talking about one of our great presidents with Bret Baier. He, as you know, is the host of Special Report, the anchor who also loves history every bit as much as you, the viewing audience, and John and I do too. John, you have a question every show that you like to ask. What's today's?
Yeah, and I think that I know Brett knows the answer to this because I saw him talk about it on Fox and Friends last week. So,
well, fine.
But here's the question. Maybe I'll stump you.
Yeah,
Teddy Roosevelt was shot by John Schrank on October 14th, 1912. The bullet was significantly slowed before it lodged in his chest. Which of these three items did not help protect him? A steel spectacle case, B, a 50-page copy of his speech folded in half, or C, a leather-bound copy of his memoir. Ron?
I think I'm going to go the leather-bound copy of the memoir, because I feel like I heard about the other two. Did I nail it, John?
I'll let Brett answer because I know he knows the answer to this.
Brett,
Yes.
what's the answer?
You are correct. It was an eyeglass case and a 50-page speech that prevents the bullet from going all the way in. It did go in, though.
Yeah.
And as he's bleeding, and he pulls open his jacket, and there's all blood here, but he keeps delivering the speech for 45 minutes before somebody takes him off the stage in Milwaukee.
Wow.
It's
okay.
insane. So let's talk a little bit about his efforts with national parks and with national forests. I mean, he had a significant impact, including the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
He protected a lot of national resources and land. And to thank him, the National Forest Service is created by him. If you think about the expansion of executive power, this is the president that does that. If you add up all the executive orders from George Washington to McKinley, the 25th president, Teddy Roosevelt, the 26th president, had 1,300 executive orders. Signed from 1 through 25, 1,200 executive orders. And just to put it in perspective, Trump in the first term, 210. In the second term, 220 so far. So expansion of executive power, 1,300 executive orders. A lot of those had to do with conservation and protecting land around the country.
How do you think his policies would square against, say, the Republican Party of today? I mean, they would be at odds with some of his policies, no?
Yes. I mean, he doesn't fit into a box, as I said. He's a Republican and a conservative, but he is also a progressive in some ways. Some of the antitrust stuff and some of the labor stuff doesn't really fit. But, you know, you look at President Trump, and there are some policies that don't fit. You know, there is some stuff that fighting for the worker and how he's kind of shifted the party to more of a workers' party. There are similarities with Teddy Roosevelt, but differences as well.
Well, you know, we just have a couple of minutes left, and to me, TR seems like if any president was ever going to live to 100, it would be him. And I do want to get some perspective from you on those final years of his life and why he seemed to die almost at a kind of a relatively early age. But first, at the end of his presidency, Taft comes in. He's the handpicked successor. Then why does he turn on Taft? And did TR let his own ego get in the way? Because the Bull Moose Party didn't get him back into office. No. It just guaranteed that Woodrow Wilson would be the next president.
100%. It definitely did. You know, in that run, in the Bull Moose run, the Progressive Party, he gets the most votes of any third party. I mean, more than Ross Perot against Clinton and GW. So he gets 19.9%, I think. You're right. He is mad that Taft is not following his policies to a T, and that's why he gets in. Which is kind of ironic because he pledges after McKinley's assassination that he is going to follow, you know, McKinley's policies, and he does for a while and keeps the cabinet for a while, but then changes and becomes his own president. And then Taft was doing the same thing.
Yeah, and then why did he die at relatively, it seemed like a fairly early age? Walk us through that last year or so of his life.
Well, you know, he did go to South America and the River of Doubt, and he gets really sick, and it takes a lot of the vitality out of him. But what really killed him was the death of his son Quentin, who dies as a fighter pilot in World War I. After that death, that despair, that grief, it was too much, and he dies at Sagamore Hill at 60 years old. And the vice president at the time said he had to die at night because if it was a day, Teddy Roosevelt would have fought it off.
Wow. How about that? All right.
Nice way to end it.
John.
Brett, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
You bet.
Can't wait to read the book.
Thank you.
Can we get a pledge
Thanks
from
a
you,
lot.
Brett, that every time I'm sure you got at least another 6 or 7 presidential biographies. You come join us on the Great American
Story. We'll tick through them, but I'll come back every time, I promise.
Every time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Brett.
Thanks a lot.
Wow. What a great time to explore one of our great presidents. You know, I think maybe there was a little, we had one of our favorite episodes was Mount Rushmore.
I know, yeah.
Not too long ago.
Yeah.
I guess there was a little controversy about Roosevelt going up on the mountain because, I mean, he was the contemporary at the time, basically, whereas all the others were like larger than life from an earlier time, an earlier era.
It's the benefit of hindsight now is, you know, you look back and you go, well, TR certainly was larger than life and certainly does belong on Mount Rushmore, I think.
Yeah.
You know, what an incredible life, you know, and I think Brett kind of spelled that out. I mean, we didn't talk too much about it, but he went down the River of Doubt, the Amazon, unexplored territory, the Amazon River in South America. He got malaria and, you know, got, you know, sick and, injured and, begged to be left by his son. His son Kermit was with him. And just what a colorful life. And
for sure.
Yeah, I like that Bret, says that, he's larger than life because it is true.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is really interesting is that there's audio recordings of Teddy Roosevelt.
And you found him, John?
I found one, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I think it's really cool to be able to hear him speak because he might not sound like like what you would expect. You'd expect this gruff, like real Rough Rider,
Okay.
Let's take a listen, and I'll let the viewers kind of judge for themselves what they think. So take a listen.
The great fundamental issue now before our people can be stated clearly. It is, are the American people fit to govern themselves, to rule themselves, to control themselves? I believe they are. My opponents do not. I believe in the right of the people to it. I believe that the majority of the plain people of the United States will, day in and day out, make fewer mistakes in governing themselves than any smaller class or body of men, no matter what their training, will make in trying to govern. I believe again that the American people are as a whole capable of self-control and of learning by their mistakes. Our opponents pay lip loyalty to this doctrine, but they show their real beliefs by the way in which they champion every device to make the nominal rule of the people a sham. I am not leading this fight as a matter of aesthetic pleasure. I am leading because somebody must lead, or else the fight would not be made at all.
Pretty cool clip, huh? I mean, what'd you think? I mean,
as much to hear his voice, I think, as anything else.
Yeah.
It just, the series of heartaches that he went through, I was thinking about this. I can only think of one other president, and that would be Franklin Pierce. His son was killed by a train.
Oh, goodness.
As he and his wife were heading to Washington for the inauguration. She never really recovered from that, and he had to trudge on as President Franklin Pierce. Beyond that, I don't know that anybody's dealt with a kind of heartache that this whole story that his wife and his mother both lay dying in the same house, and he's rushing upstairs and downstairs to try to be with them both, hoping they'll pull through, but in both cases they don't.
Yeah, it's a remarkable life, and I think we view him as the man of the people, the people's champion, as Bret Bret wrote. But he did come from privilege.
True.
But I maybe he worked to kind of not exploit that. He certainly was a public servant, and from the very basic things of a commissioner of New York all the way up to presidency, to Secretary of the Navy. He a life of public service for sure. One
of the other things I think that maybe gets overlooked just a little bit is he was also a family man. He loved the time he got with his children. And there's a great story that's told. He's really starting to come into his own in the world of politics. He's just been elected the governor of New York. And it's such a cold day. They're not going to have the inaugural festivities there in Albany. Outside, it's going to be inside. And the crowd is cheering him on, and he suddenly looks up in the gallery, and here are all of his children just going wild for Dad.
Yeah, that's
cool. And before he starts the speech, he blows them a kiss. And I think it's a moment that encapsulates the fact that here he's got all of his adoring fans in the political world, but what did he really care about? His kids up in the gallery.
That's so cool. Did he remarry? Because I'm not, after his wife passed, I'm not sure.
Yes,
he did.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, he did have kids, so
right.
That's fascinating.
So,
that's good stuff.
John, a life well lived for sure. Although, and he is up on Mount Rushmore.
He is.
But as Bret explained to us earlier, his ego did get in the way. He thought he could win that last election.
Yeah, right. He was the
never
spoiler,
did.
and like you said, he ended up putting Wilson in the White House.
Yes, right.
I mean,
yeah.
but I just. I'd be interested, if there was polling back then, I would love to have seen what his poll numbers would have been, and how, if you could put contemporary America into, the turn of the century, and just kind of see how he would fare as a politician.
By the way, highly recommend, go to North Dakota,
Yeah.
see the places, see the old cabin that was his, see the lands that he grew to love.
Yeah.
He actually said at one point, if not for my time in North Dakota, I never would have become president. He put that much value on it. Then if you drop down to South Dakota, there he is.
There he is.
Right on Mount
And
Rushmore.
hey, I'll add one more. Go over to Devil's Tower in Wyoming, the first national monument ever created.
Yep.
By TR. It's a great thing.
Quite a man, quite a life, that's for sure, and quite a book from Bret Baier. Thanks for watching this episode of The Great American Story.